There, Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, thank you very much.
Pakistan
helped us capture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the man called the architect behind 9/11. But that was back in 2003. Has Pakistan changed from a friend to a foe since then? Joining me now is Fox News military analyst, Lieutenant General Tom McInerney. Lieutenant General, thank you for joining us. What has happened to Pakistan, our ally in 2003 under George Bush, turned over KSM, which eventually led, his waterboarding gave us information that finally led to the target #1, bin Laden. What happened in those 8 years?
Boy, that's a great question, Eric. But let's start with basics. Number one, Pakistan created the Taliban when the Russians left Afghanistan. Extremely important. The Taliban can only exist today because of Pakistan's support. I think we've been going on 10 years on this now, that we ought to have figured this out and start saying, look, gents, we understand what it is. We understand they can't survive unless you keep supporting them, because the strategy we have in Afghanistan is a flawed strategy because they're supporting the Taliban. And so we're pouring billions of dollars into winning hearts and minds when the real problem is Pakistan continuing to refresh this evil ideology that the Taliban
so what
and Al-Qaeda
what do you think, sir? Is it time to cut Pakistan off? And what would be the risk of cutting Pakistan off? And maybe even taking it one step further, leaning on Pakistan to start turning over some of the people that we want to see brought to justice?
Well, that's what I'd like them to do, is to get on our side and to admit that this evil ideology is only going to cause them bigger problems and could fracture their country. Because if they don't, and look, I want them on our side, but they're going to have to fish and cut bait. And if they don't, then I think we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And we don't want to make those decisions. But I think that this is now evidence to the whole world, Eric, that they have been hiding Osama bin Laden there for at least 5 or 6 months. And
years.
That it could have been. I've heard other things where he was. But the fact is they have been hiding him. They're also hiding the Haqqani network and other networks. And we know that. We've had all kinds of signals intelligence and other information. We've got to confront them with it.
Lieutenant General,
and how they got there is maybe they never left there.
All right, sir. Just about a half minute or so. Killing bin Laden, is that a game changer?
I think it's a game changer on the psychological warfare. It is not a game changer in the warfighting phase and going against radical Islam. We need to define that radical Islam, what it is, and get the moderate Muslims to start picking up their responsibility. This is their fight, not our fight. Right. And so unless we understand the ideology, Eric, we can't win. We don't understand this ideology.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, sir, Lieutenant General McInerney. Appreciate your time. Joining me now is tonight's all-star panel. On the left, Attorney Joy Jackson. On the right, Fox News contributor Andrea Tantaros, and founder of the Guardian Angels, Mr. Curtis Sliwa. Curtis, you're chomping at the bit. I'm sure you want to jump in here. Game changer for you?
Oh, the only game change here is that you ask, what did the Pakistanis know? They know we are first-class suckers. They play us for chumps each and every time. They house Osama bin Laden, not in some rat hole, but in the Ponderosa, the biggest mansion, right next to their West Point, next to their military establishment, near the retired generals. And then all of a sudden, the president today says, we had no idea. John Kerry is ready to give them $7 billion in fiscal aid to Prime Minister Bhutto, who, you know what he's called? 10% Bhutto. 10% for me, 10% for me, 10% for me. He takes his cut, and they continue to get billions from us, even though they haven't done jack diddly squat for us.
And just jump in here. We've given them $18.6 billion since 9/11. Isn't it time just cut them off? Cut them off at the vine.
Well, I agree in cutting them off. I do think it's a lot more delicate than that because they are a nuclear country. You have to be a little more thoughtful.
Everyone keeps saying that, but why?
Well, because you can't just, you can cut off the funding, but you don't cut off the funding, thumb your nose, and act out. If it really depends on, do you believe, keep your friends close and your enemies close?
They held bin Laden, our target #1, the one we've been going after for the better part of a decade.
Here's where I really
and they
get
housed
enraged.
him and they let him sit under their nose.
Here's where I get enraged. Think of all the men and women who have died, our soldiers, trying to find bin Laden. That's what really angers me.
Of course. So what,
when they've known
why
where
are
he
we
is, we've spent all this money and all this time.
Tiptoeing around Pakistan?
I'm not saying tiptoe around Pakistan.
No, but the right is saying
Absolutely
we need to be careful about Pakistan. I'm trying to figure out, why do we have to be so careful with Pakistan? They're no friend of ours.
Because they're armed.
Go ahead, Joey.
Do we really want a Pakistan
I don't know.
Armed and that has...
What are they? They're our friend now? Are you sure they're our friend?
I've never said they were our friend.
Right, but I think it's important, Eric, like anything. Look, in the practice of law, you reserve judgment. There's due process. There's all this. Now, in saying that, you heard the Congresswoman. There will be an investigation as to what they knew and when they knew it. However, she also indicated that there are other interests that are very sensitive that none of us on the panel know about as to why that relationship needs to be preserved and protected to some degree.
You trust
So before
them?
we go, no, of course not.
These
it's not a matter of trust, but it is.
We paid $1 trillion to get this guy. They won't even show us a freaking picture.
I understand.
No video,
and
no DNA. We're not
I
entitled to that.
understand, and I respect your out. Those are two separate issues, Curtis. Whether or not the president, who did not say he would not release, what the president said is that there are sensitivity issues with respect to releasing the photos. He did not say he wasn't going to release the photos.
Hang on. Throughout the bin Laden drama, the White House has been sensitive about offending the Muslim world. Some say too sensitive. Why do we need to be so careful? Joining me now is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Dr. Jasser, thanks for joining us. Do we need to tiptoe around this raid? Is the Muslim community about to, go up in arms at America for going in and taking out a murderous killer?
Absolutely not. I mean, Eric, I can't tell you how offended I am, not only as a former naval officer, but as a Muslim, that they think that actually the type of appeasement they're doing is somehow protecting us from offending us, when in fact I'm offended that they think that some type of Islamic burial is necessary for this thug, this monster of humanity, who I wouldn't, as a Navy doc, I'm thinking to myself, if I was on the ship, that they're saying that a Muslim seaman was asked by the CEO of the Vincent to read scripture over him, I would have begged to refuse that order, because he doesn't deserve an honorable burial. He doesn't deserve an Islamic burial. And just like the terrorists in Mumbai, remember, the Muslim cemeteries in India would not bury those terrorists because they committed an evil act. They said, you know what? They may be Muslim, but they're not going to be buried by our imams and by our community.
Doctor, I have to ask you, again, this is, bits and pieces, we're piecing this together. Apparently bin Laden's dead body was prepared. It was washed. It was prayed over, as you point out. Really, do we really need to do this? Is this whole point, is this whole exercise so we don't take off, 3 billion Muslims? Is that what this is all about?
If it is, they're completely naive and misguided, because they're going to find something to get ticked about, whether it's a Quran burning by a wacky church or whether it's the royal wedding or whatever it is. They're going to find something to get mad about, and they're going to act on it. But yet what it tells Muslims that are trying to be, as the general said earlier, the moderate Muslims that are going to be the solution are not going to be able to take back our faith from the radicals, because we're being told that these radicals somehow deserve honorable Islamic burials and are not allowing us to say, you know what, these are Muslims that are abhorrent to us as human beings. And look at, did Saddam Hussein get a Muslim burial? I don't think so.
Sir, I want to get this to you real quick, because we heard this morning. I was watching a Fox News reporter who was in Pakistan. He said he went up to dozens of people in the street, random people, asked them what they thought. Not one single solitary guy thought it was a good idea what America did to go in there and take out Osama bin Laden. The rest of them thought it was a violation of their sovereignty or some other form of a diss to the Muslim world. Does that surprise you?
Not really, because, Eric, we've been missing in action in the war of ideas. We've allowed the propagandists from Al Jazeera to GOTV in Pakistan and others to paint America as this colonialist power, imperialist, and we have not stood behind the freedom activists in these countries, and we've been looking at these countries as simply either our friends or our enemies, as a binary equation, and we've not been helping the dissidents on the ground, whether they're in Syria or Egypt or in Pakistan, that would be able to reform and modernize those communities away from the current current antagonism between either secular fascism of the militaries or the theocratic fascism of radical Islam. And somehow we have to begin the war of ideas and put money, not just throw cash at these countries, but help them hand in hand in building modern institutions.
Hang in there, Dr. Jasser. I want to bring it out to the panel. Courtesy, is there an opportunity to do it, Dr. Jasser? What do you think? I mean, he suggests we go hand in hand. I'm not sure there's a handshake out. There's a hand extended from the Muslim community.
Well, sure, there's a hand with the gun to our head in Pakistan. It says, keep giving us money and we'll keep screwing you. What would you do? I mean, think of it, Eric. They just held our public enemy #1 and got away with it. And are going to continue to get billions of dollars. They can continue to screw us and know that the money will flow because they take money from the Saudis and they take money from the Americans. And naturally, they just enrich their own pockets. They don't even help their own people.
So let's open
They don't even help their own people who are impoverished.
Because I think the panel is in agreement that you cut the funding, but then what would you do beyond that? Thumb your nose at them, cut off all ties?
No, I would support our allies, India. I would say, we're with you, India. We're taking out Pakistan. You give sanctuary to our enemies, and you are with our enemies.
This is a very good point. Go ahead, Joey.
What's the good point about it? So the fact of the matter, Curtis, is we should just cut everything off, not be at all sensitive to whatever we don't know with regard to issues and with regard to national security concerns where they may bridge some gaps.
Dr. Jasser, what about it? What about whatever funding we were giving to Pakistan, turn around and say, hey, India, you know what? Do it. We've got your back.
Well, we need to continue to support India because it's a democracy, but at the end of the day, we can't, if you take your money out of there, I'm not saying to throw cash, but we have to help build institutions like we did in Poland, Romania, and Czechoslovakia. If we want these countries to transform, we can't just abandon them. Remember, we're living in a global economy, and if we ignore this country, they're going to start going towards China, towards other enemies, North Korea, other places where they will find more receptive places. So I'm saying it's not black and white. You're either with us or
Go ahead, Ed. You don't like to say that.
I hear the doctor talking about nation building, which I think we're all firmly against, at least on this side. We're not saying build schools and help change hearts and minds. We're saying cut off the funding because this country can't afford it anyway. But be wise when dealing with them. I mean, we can't completely build up their society, but we can't trust them either.
Eric, do you realize?
Well, without our investment, they're going to continue to drive against us, and it will hurt our economy in the end. So we have to look at whether it's a good investment or not to help build institutions.
Hang on, sir.
Realize the support of the Pakistani government to the infamous Professor Khan, who developed nuclear weapons and helped sell them to North Koreans. They're already our enemy. They're helping our enemies. They keep them under house arrest. They stab us in the back 50 times each and every day, and we just keep giving them money.
So why are we giving them money? Is there any basis to give them money? Are we that ignorant as a country that we're giving people money who are stabbing us in their back?
Princeton, Harvard, Columbia, the universities of institutions of the Ivy League, guys who have no street smarts, no boots on the ground.
Do you really believe that?
Think we're going to buy their loyalty?
Really believe
that? A great discussion. We're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Thank you very much, sir. Coming up, Ann Coulter handicaps the GOP's possible presidential players. Can any of them